I also have trouble where sometimes you respond and you're not sure if your responses are damaging to the students.
Yeah.
I gathered information in the stats class last semester, how many siblings do you have? And I get to the one who told me she has 17 siblings, and I'm like, oh my God, is your mom still alive? Not the best response.
But sometimes it's hard to filter before it goes.
Yeah, I just can't imagine popping out 17 kids.
Wow. Was it?
That's the
same
assumption,
mother,
though. I mean,
Yeah.
maybe it was a fosters
family
or
or foster?
steps.
It was not a blended family, it was
Unbelievable.
17 kids.
I didn't make it to 2. That's a lot of kids.
All right, well, we're past 3:30. You're on
We're good.
the Zoom, okay. So this is a continuation of what I presented last year at TeachECC, which is my journey in inclusive and equitable classroom. So in an experiment to increase inclusivity in my classrooms, I got this HIP from AQ training. There's a whole bunch of acronyms for you. HIP is high impact practice. I still don't know what AQ stands for. But highly recommend their online training. They're very well set up, reasonable to do in the amount of time you're given. And I've done 3 and I've always walked away with at least one thing that was useful. So
What kind of training was it? I'm sorry.
AQ, ACUE,
Oh, okay,
Association
yeah.
of Colleges
I've
and
done one of
University
those.
Educators.
there you go.
That's from Jeannie Anderson. I cannot take credit for that. Thank you, Jeannie.
No, I did do one of their training
And
sessions.
I'm sorry.
I have done their training sessions. I wasn't putting, we were talking about acronyms and I'm like,
Last summer, CEDL sponsored one of the courses and hopefully they'll be doing it again this summer. So if the opportunity arises, I highly recommend it. So I also have read several books that were provided through CEDL or through a lit search by librarians for me, or through recommendations from Tyler and Heather for other things. But deep learning by students shouldn't require us to become people we are not. So if you hate icebreakers, you shouldn't be forced to use icebreakers. It's not about the tool, it's about the goal. So we need to find pedagogical strategies that fit our personalities as educators, as well as the personality of the classroom, which changes from semester to semester and course to course, where our goal is to improve performance on the outcomes for our classes. It's a challenge that requires hard work, intent, practice, and most importantly, mistakes. You have to be willing to try something and fall flat on your face in front of everybody. Pick yourself up, figure out what you've learned from it, try something new. The next.
adjust your bunny ears.
And then another thing that can be a challenge when you're dealing with equitable and inclusive teaching is that language is constantly changing. So we went from Latino to Latinx to Latine, and I'm not sure where we've landed with that one. But as you grow and as you learn and as you try and be more inclusive and you accept feedback from the people you're dealing with on a day-to-day basis, your language might change, and what you see from 2 years ago might make you cringe. And it's okay, that's part of the growing process. And you need to recognize that inclusive teaching is not a finish line. You don't accomplish these 3 classes, implement these 5 strategies, and you're done. Something that you're constantly striving for, and it's a continuous journey. So what led me to this path or this preference or this work that I've been trying. The first thing was when I realized that I was perpetuating things that worked against me when I was in grad school. I vividly remember telling a young woman in my differential equations class that she cannot cry in front of her professors if she wants to finish an engineering degree. I was reinforcing the behavior that shouldn't be there. That led me to a lot of discussions with Joyce Fountain. I miss Joyce. She was really good at calling you out on behavior, but also being very supportive as you try and change. When you realize that the data doesn't reflect what you think you're doing in the classroom. So you think you're being equitable, you think you're being inclusive, and yet there's discrepancies in your performance rates of students. So we now have the capability of disaggregating our data, and it can be somewhat traumatizing the first time you look at it. And when the majority of your incoming students tell you they are not a math person, where does that attitude come from? And how do you overcome it? So, definitions, diversity describes the ways students are similar and different from one another. Just because you have a diverse population in your classroom does not mean you have an inclusive environment. Equity is the goal we strive to reach, in which all learners start by having access to the same opportunities, but access is not enough. Equity requires naming and dismantling the systems, structures, and oppressive forces that act as barriers for some learners more than others. When we work to remove barriers, more individuals can succeed, and this is another ongoing process. And so participating in things like the call out for, what have we had so far? We wrote a college policy on AI, that was last semester, right? Neurodiversity was started last semester. Accessibility is going on this semester. There's always opportunities to participate on these committees, and a woefully small number of volunteers to participate in them. And then inclusion describes a culture in which all learners feel welcome, valued, and safe, and it requires intentional and deliberate strategies. So you can't accidentally end up with an inclusive classroom regularly. And why is it equity, diversity, and inclusion? It's because the 5-year strategic plan for the college has 5 philosophies that everything is supposed to be on. And it's equity, EDIJ, equity, diversity, inclusion, justice, and learning are the 5. So this is a focus for the college that we should all be striving for. So change requires support. Educators can play a significant role in student retention and success by choosing to utilize inclusive teaching strategies. Adopting the strategies often means intentionally moving away from how we were traditionally taught. So I don't have math classes with a midterm and a final exam, and that's your grade. Change by educators, however, requires time, knowledge, encouragement, and courage. It also requires a change in how we are evaluated and what resources and supports are made available to us. You can't just snap your fingers and expect every resource to be accessible. Those of us in math and the sciences rely heavily on graphs, formulas, tables. What are the worst things to try and make accessible? Graphs, formulas, tables. So without training, without support, you're not going to get an accessible course from us. Any changes have to come from an authentic place. You have to believe in what you're doing. So not all practices that are outlined in the readings, in the literature, and the materials are gonna work for everybody. I would recommend that you start small. It can be as simple as including more low stakes assessments over the course of the semester. And in terms of our increase in accessibility, in accommodations, and in neurodiversity in our classrooms, I would especially encourage you to reevaluate group work. Not in whether or not you do it, but in how that can impact students, especially if you have ASD, ADHD students. That can be extremely traumatizing to be thrown into a group with no good scaffolding for how that group should work. What you should do, according to the literature, is every pedagogical decision should be analyzed with 2 questions: who might be left behind as a result of this practice, and how can I invite those students in? So if you are using participation points in your classrooms, how are you inviting in the students who are too shy or have other issues to be able to speak up? If you are doing group work, what do you do with the student who has the accommodation that says no group work? Are they gonna be required? Yeah, it's neurodivergent students, depending on where you are in the galaxy of what makes up neurodivergence, group work can be actually detrimental.
Does that actually appear on the SDS? Because I don't think I've ever seen that on any of the SDSs that I've received.
I'm sorry?
The SDSs that we receive on students, I don't remember there ever being one that says group work. Is that where it would be, or do we have to
It
know?
would be there, because I've had it show up, I think, twice in this year.
Yeah,
No,
I
no
have
group
not,
work.
so that's interesting, yeah. And I do group work, so, but I've never seen it show up in a SDS.
Well, in gen ed math and gen ed stats, which is what I'm predominantly teaching right now because I'm on the TeachECC, another acronym that I don't know what it stands for. Gateway course completion. So we're talking about gen ed math, gen ed stats, and English 101. And teaching those gen ed classes, I have a disproportionate number of students who are on the spectrum. You add into that the other classes I teach, which is at the other end, Cal 2, Cal 3 differential equations. Now you're talking about people going into STEM, and those people are disproportionately on the spectrum compared to other people. So it might be that what you're teaching doesn't lend itself to those students being in your classroom. But yes, it has shown up on the accommodations that I've seen. Demonstrate carry up. So focusing on STEM, which is where I live, the evidence has been mounting for a long time that students don't, underrepresented populations don't follow through with majors in the STEM areas because they don't feel welcome, not because they're not prepared. So that's an issue. Our demographic shifts, that are going on in the nation as a whole, and here especially, we are over 50% Latinx. We are majority minority institution when you add in all of the racial categories. We need to be responsive to those students. So we need to be taking a critical look at our STEM curricula to ensure that they reflect the diverse cultures and backgrounds in our classrooms. And this is a website I found that is focused on people with brains like mine. I love a flow chart. It's very easy for me to follow. So inclusive teaching, this was in the American Society for Cell Biology. In the slides, there's a link to the website so that you can find it. But you can go through this process, excuse me, where you start with self-awareness, then you go to working on your empathy, classroom climate, and then pedagogical choices, which is where I'm at now, where I'm trying to foster a sense of belonging in my classrooms. So developing self-awareness is knowing one's own professional and social identity. It's the key first step in developing a classroom built on inclusive relationships. The process of knowing oneself is not always pleasant to go through, but it's needed. And we need a safe space to be able to do that exploration. Developing empathy. This is a lot more detail. I'm not going to provide all of it to you. Not all of it's relevant to the STEM classroom or to any generic classroom. But I would say that the literature on sociology and psychology of college students, the books that I've read so far and the articles I've read so far have been broadly applicable. Classroom climate, we want our classroom to be a supportive climate. We want a sense of belonging in our class because that leads to greater motivation, greater engagement, and greater achievement. And it's both instructor-student interactions and student-student interactions that contribute to the classroom culture. And this website goes through a bunch of instructor-student interactions that you could look at, as well as your student-to-student interactions. That one's one that still makes me struggle. I don't like policing my students. And they seem to shut up as soon as I walk past their table when they're having group discussions. One of the things you might notice in the slides is I go between the word student and the word learner. Student refers to the actual students in our classrooms, but a lot of this stuff applies to us as faculty, that we are learners as well. So when you see learner, that's something that I consider applicable to faculty as well as students, whereas student is specifically for the students in your classroom. So pedagogical choices. Students' feelings and emotional responses are important for their persistence and success. A sense of belonging and feelings of competence produce positive, effective experiences and can help the formation of a science identity. Again, STEM focus, because that's where I live. Instructors can help promote positive, affective experiences through successful practice experiences, opportunities for students to observe others, offering support, and using small group work, which yes, seems counterintuitive to what I said about I hate group work. It's not the group work itself, it's the structure of the group work. But this is something as simple as when I developed guided notes for my Calc 2 class. Every section started with a mini biography of a woman or a person of color or a member of the LGBTQ community who's made contributions in math or science. And it gives an opportunity for a student to see themselves in the work that they want to do. So sense of belonging. So for fostering students' sense of belonging is a key element of an inclusive classroom. The goal can be achieved in many ways, depending on the particular instructor and set of students in the class. There are some examples of things that you can do in this, but the four major questions that I want to look at is, what is a sense of belonging? Because I'm a mathematician, and if you don't have a definition, you can't work past that. So what is a sense of belonging? What are the central tenets and key concepts of sense of belonging? How has sense of belonging been examined in prior works? And how does sense of belonging apply to various student population? If you have not read College Students' Sense of Belonging, A Key to Educational Success for All Students by Strayhorn, highly recommend it. It's a bit repetitive, but there's some good information in there. So in terms of college, a sense of belonging refers to students' perceived social support on campus, a feeling or sensation of connectedness, and the experience of mattering or feeling cared about, accepted, respected, valued by, and important to the campus community or others on campus, such as faculty, staff, and peers. So it's the feeling that you matter. It's a very squishy definition. And the thing that I can't stand about it, that drives me nuts, is that it changes from day to day, class to class. What a student needs at any given point in time to feel like they belong is going to be different at midterms versus the first day of class versus the shock when they get the final grade. Hopefully it's a good shock. So sense of belonging is something that's constantly in motion. The goalposts are always moving for you, which makes it challenging. The core elements are that it is a universal basic human need. Fundamental motive sufficient to drive behavior. The context, the time, and factors determine the importance of it. It's related to mattering. I still don't know what the difference is between those two from the literature that I've read, but I'm hoping it will eventually be clarified for me. It's influenced by one's identities, it leads to positive outcomes and successes, and it has to be satisfied as conditions change. And it dates back to Maslow. So it goes back to the 50s, it's not a new concept. Maslow put it right in the middle of his pyramid. I couldn't do the graphic very well, and when I took a picture of it from the book, it didn't look very nice, so. But you start with your basic needs: air, food, water, shelter, sleep, safety and security, both physical and emotional, and then belongingness falls right above that. So encouraging positive interactions, connecting students with supportive faculty, and providing opportunities for student involvement help them feel a sense of belonging. So one of the things that I have implemented, I started last semester, didn't have it quite down. I'm much better at it this semester, is each week I try and put up one notice on something that's going on around campus. So last week it was the call for elections. The week before that was the auditions for Susan's play. So I'm trying to get stuff up on a regular weekly basis so that students can see what's available and around for them. So fulfillment of our educational mission rests in part on making sure that students and the faculty who teach them feel a sense of belonging in and at the college. You're not going to get faculty doing this if faculty don't feel connected to the campus. If we have to work too hard to find out what's going on this week on campus, it's not going to get posted. So sense of belonging is particularly meaningful to those who perceive themselves as marginal to the mainstream life of college. The more students have to do to feel a sense of belonging, the less resources they have available to them to do the actual academic work that we want them to be able to do. So we want to make sure that that's not a battle that's going on, just like we don't want them to be hungry or naked or homeless. You know, you have to take care of belonging the same as everything else, because it's a basic human need. So where did I start? From an AQ training, it was, and this is something that's very common in at least the math department. I don't know about across campus, but with Syllabus, giving a syllabus quiz or a syllabus scavenger hunt. Yeah, I never found it to work. Then we moved up to the, I'm sorry, that was the syllabus hunt. Or this is the syllabus scavenger hunt. So from the quiz, you go to the scavenger hunt where they have to look up the information in a small group. Syllabus reconnaissance is one step up above that. And that is where instead you just hand out the syllabus and give them 15 minutes. And tell them to find 3 things that are important to them. And share it with the class. And usually by the end of the class period, everything's been hit. But this wasn't very effective for me either, in that they still only knew the 3 things they looked up. As opposed to what everything else was. So, questions for the group. What is the purpose of a syllabus?
Communication tool.
Communication tool. Communicating what?
How the class works.
How the class works.
Expectations.
Expectations.
Topics that are taught.
Content covered. About it?
I was gonna say, I have to meet contract obligations. I don't think it really serves a purpose. My personal feeling is the syllabus doesn't really serve a purpose.
The content, I would agree with you that the syllabus itself has become cumbersome.
The content
It's
is
too
valuable.
big to
Yeah,
put everything in there that we're required to put in
Correct.
there, pretty much guarantees that no student's gonna read it.
correct.
Whereas the actual stuff that we have to communicate to our students, I don't think any of us would disagree that it's relevant, important,
Correct.
that it needs to be communicated.
Correct.
It's just for the love of God, let me give more than one handout.
On the Zoom, we have someone that said it's a contract between student and teacher.
Contract between student and teacher. I would add teacher and student as well. And how do you craft your syllabus? What do you do?
Follow the template.
Yeah, follow the template
Fill in the template.
Yeah.
and then add stuff that I think is essential.
It's the same thing, you just copy over from a previous
like copy and
semester,
paste,
you
right?
change some things based on last experience.
Adjust the dates.
Yeah, of course.
Hopefully you don't do what I did like 4 years ago, which 5 years ago, right before pandemic time, which I accidentally put an extra week into my schedule. And I couldn't understand why every single class I was right on track and I was. And it wasn't until 2 weeks before the end of the semester that one of my students is like, school ends next week.
I will have to say, I wish we had like 2 separate syllabi. The one, because there's stuff in that template that we have to say and leave the
Mhm.
way it is. And that's fine, but then when they come to my class and it's thrown into my syllabus, they don't want to reread all that and relook at it.
You're
Yes, it'd be nice if there was a map there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You
Here's
pull
the
out
college one.
Resources for the students and.
I did-
A college one. Guide or something, and then our.
I did put a
Yeah.
red line around everything I was able to change that pertained to the class, and I do let my students know, does this syllabus always start out, does this look similar to your other classes? They're like, yeah, it looks just like it, and I'm like, well, there are some differences. Everything that's circled in red pertains to this class, everything else pertains to the college as a whole, so you may have already read it.
Mhm.
I don't know if I'm supposed to do that, but I do. Cause I was finding, when I went to that 12-page syllabus, because we had to follow a template, they don't wanna read it,
No, no.
and I
no.
can't say I blame them.
Yeah, it would be nice if we went fully digital, where there was simply a link that you clicked on. And, not that I want to assign work to Tyler and Heather, but there needs to be something added to that syllabus template that deals with AI. We'll talk
I
after.
believe I believe there's a phrase in there right now that says something in the. Something just about faculty can determine
Yeah.
what's authorized and what's not. In our defense, it was prior to the AI statement and
Yeah.
anything else.
Now that the
came down.
AI statement is out, now that I don't know if the neurodivergence
I don't know
one
if
is
that was
out
done
yet, and then the accessibility one. But yeah, it'd be nice if there were simply links to those. All right, how do you determine the assessments you're going to use? What do you use?
I use different assessments. It definitely depends on the class. Yeah, some classes are more oriented towards the group work and some are,
The 95?
Yeah.
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 I like it when there's another math person in the room.
So we do some group assessments as well.
How about you, Dawn?
My classes are all competency based, so I have a large assignment that's scaffolded throughout the semester. So they do, well, in my classes, they can resubmit multiple times up till the final project. So like they turn in part one and they can resubmit it until it gets all the points.
Is that,
So,
is that mandated?
yes,
So you
But I
have no
also-
choice.
no, but I also build in a lot of like little things that make them feel successful throughout, that are little bits of points around it. So, but yeah, it has to be a,
And what do you use?
Depends on which class it is, but the one class that I'll share with you, we do simulations, and they get points for completing them. And that basically is like reading the book and practicing all at the same time without getting docked for anything wrong. And then they go on to do, it's considered a project, but it's just a Excel document with whatever was covered in that chapter, usually about 12, 15 steps. And those are more points because it's on their own. And then at the end of each unit, I'll do some critical thinking questions and I'll put them into groups and do group work and they have to solve them. They have to look at the Excel document and answer the critical thinking questions. And then there's the certification exam at the end, which is high stakes,
But required.
yes, it's required and it's what's wanted in the workplace. They want to walk in with a certification. So that's kind of what I use in my classes.
You have a nice variety. Sure. I always wonder what happens with those areas where there's that outside accreditation that you have to satisfy. But. And do you do anything in particular to build community in your classrooms? Okay, what do you do?
I mean, I meet with them all individually in the first couple weeks. We do, I know you don't love icebreakers, but we do so many games in early childhood. I don't call them icebreakers because they're learning to work with young children. So we have to find our inner child. So, and that in itself builds community, but we do a lot, like I also take children's games and include inclusive things. Like the equity walk and things like that, I kind of adapt it and turn it into, and so then they find each other. Because my students might take 6 classes with me in one semester.
Right.
So like I have to find a way to distinguish one class from the other, but they also know each other really well.
I was gonna say, you're very
Yeah.
programmatic. at
Like
the-
they're very,
Move through it a cohort.
they kind of do, like they, because like right now they're hybrid back to back on Tuesday nights. And so I have like 30 students from last semester who are now all in this second group of students, but then the first class is a whole new 30 students. And so they will follow each other like little kind of lemmings because they want their friends. So I work a lot on getting them to know how a group works. Like what are the roles of a group? Which roles work for introverts? Which roles work for extroverts? What if you're neurodivergent? Like, and that's all community building.
I envy you people who teach in the areas that have cohorts that go. We usually only see our students once
Yeah, I'm lucky.
and then they're off to another class. And what do you see as challenges or roadblocks to getting creative in your classrooms?
I think my biggest roadblock is just time. It takes a lot of time to put the creativity into new things for classes.
So is that the prep time?
Yeah.
Yeah, because unfortunately, the college doesn't want to pay our adjuncts to prep, so yes, that is a problem. Time is a huge issue.
I would just say time in the classroom too, doing some of these things.
Yeah, I always have trouble budgeting the time right.
Yeah, it's always,
You
yeah,
try something and you think it's gonna take 30 minutes
it takes
and
6.
it takes 5.
Yeah.
Vice versa. It's works out, and it's like,
You always gotta have a backup to the backup.
yeah.
My hardest thing is I teach 6 different classes. And so like if I'm trying something new, then it's like, you know, it's one class and then I've got to do that with every class and it's, you know, there's just not enough time.
Well, where I have landed with my syllabus is so I use the template. I modify it slightly based on, there's stuff in there that it feels redundant to me. I feel like you enter your grading practices 3 different times, kind of thing. But I do use the syllabus template. I fill in the mandatory stuff. And then I post it in D2L. I open D2L a week ahead of time. I send out an email and there's an announcement saying, on the first day of class, we're going to decide everything that's highlighted in yellow on this document. It is not inclusive. It's not equitable. And it is certainly not the best way to handle it. Not every student is going to have access ahead of time. Not every student knows to look, especially if they aren't taking classes the prior semester, they're not necessarily looking. Nobody checks email anymore if they're under like the age of, I don't know, 100. So the emails don't work. And unfortunately, we have the deadline of it has to be up the first day of class and turned in the final copy the second day of class. And in math, our classes mostly meet 4 days a week. But it's hard to get that kind of turnaround so that you don't have time to play around. You don't have time to discuss everything on the first day and then wait till the second day to make decisions. So my way around that is, I believe I've submitted 3 versions of my syllabi so far this semester. I tell my students, we're gonna make the decision, but it's not set in stone. We talk, we come up with, you know, what are the major things students wanna know? They wanna know what their grade's gonna be based on. So that's the bulk of what our discussion involves, and I let them pick. I try and steer away from some things, so to get them to be creative. In the classes that there's no reason we have to have a final exam. The first time somebody says a final exam, I'm like, why? Why do you want one? What would the point be? I will not, I have rules that I will not have participation points. I don't think that's an equitable and inclusive practice. I do not have attendance points because I do not want sick people in my classroom. So those are off the table. For IAI math major courses, we have a bunch of mandated things that have to happen. More than half the grade has to be based on in-person proctored assessments. The final exam, you have to have a cumulative final exam worth a minimum of, I think it's 15%. So there's restrictions on when I teach those classes, they don't get to fiddle with that, but they do get to pick what are the in-person proctored assessments gonna be? Do you want quizzes? Do you want exams? And how many? How much are they weighted? So you get those discussions going, and then we get to the second week of class. And it's like, okay, who's new? This is what we decided. Are we still all happy with it? And we vote. And anything they want to change, we can change. They set the retake policy and late work policy in my classes. So those who choose to have exams as part of their grade can choose what the retake policy is. And that always leads to a very good discussion on, I'm a human being who's entitled to have a life. I am not gonna write 15 versions of exam 1 so that you can take it 15 times before the end of the semester. It's not fair, not fair to me. But we go through discussion and we figure out what it's gonna be. I usually end up doing more than what they ask for. But I try to steer them towards a reasonable thing. Last semester I had issues where they picked stuff that I just couldn't do. I thought I would be able to do it, but I couldn't. It was, they wanted weekly quizzes along with notes being checked, along with regular homework and chapter projects. And there just wasn't enough time in the day for me to do everything. So I'm like, okay, what do you want to get rid of? We decided as a class what to get rid of. It's like, okay, the weight of that was 20%. Where are we gonna put it? And so we decide as a class what we're gonna do with that. And I found that most of my students, you know, you always have the odd one out who doesn't pay attention no matter what happens. But for the most part, my students know what their grade's based on. And they know what they can and cannot do in my classroom. They know what the policies are. They understand why the policies are what they are. And they have a say in it. And that goes a long way in my area where unless you're teaching those high-level STEM classes, our students don't want to be in math class if they could find a way around it. So how do you get over the fact that you're teaching the class they don't want to be in? That they think it's just a hoop to jump through? That they're terrified that they're not going to pass? That they don't understand what their grade's going to be based on? So how do you build that inclusive environment? How do you take somebody like me who, with the neurodivergence and the autism and the dyslexia and all of that fun stuff, not the most approachable person on the planet. I know that, but I am who I am. I can't change it. So by doing this on day one, my students get to understand that I actually do care about what their opinion is, that I will listen to them, that we will have a discussion, and that I am perfectly capable of changing a policy if needed. And I think that goes a long way towards creating an environment in my classrooms where they want to be there. I have more students in the last couple of semesters who have emailed me to apologize for missing class and let me know, despite the fact that I have no mandatory attendance and I don't require anybody to give me a reason. It's just they have moved up in the level of civility towards me because of the civility I've extended to them. So I do recommend where you can to play around with taking student input. I know that when you're in those outside accreditation things, there's limits on what you can and cannot allow student input on. And when you're
Still
teaching
no.
developmental, you can be stuck in that path. Well, you have to get them to a certain point. So
I was just thinking, I do have flexibility in the assignment. As you're talking, I'm thinking like, even though they have to meet the competency, there's different ways to get to the competency.
I've also found that the words you choose matter. I mean, really, what's the difference between a project and an exam?
Nothing but project seems so much better
Yeah, it seems a lot more
from
friendly.
a student, yeah.
I mean, a take-home exam is, oh my God, but a project. So leveraging networks is the next in the flow chart. For the love of God, ECC needs to bring back learning communities.
Mhm.
I think it would be fabulous if you had gen ed math paired with an English 101 or an English 99. Is it 99?
LTC 99.
LTC 99 kind of thing. Where you're both providing, everything's connected. I think it would be fabulous, but we just don't do it. And I don't know why.
I
I
love we
wish
had
we'd
one
bring
with
it back.
early childhood because my students literally dive under the table at math. They literally leave it till the very last class. And I'm like, that is the last thing you should do. You're gonna be here 3 more semesters.
Yeah, I back before I wanted to be inclusive and build a sense of belonging, there would be times when I would be annoyed with a student and they'd be like, but I need this I'm graduating in December. Not if you need this class. Sorry. You waited 14 weeks into the semester to worry. But yeah, I do think that the next step on my journey is gonna be trying to build a learning community. Either, well, I'd love to do you guys. Is it gen ed math they have to take? Or is it?
Yeah, I think it's one of the options. They have
'Cause if
they
it's-
have three options. I can't
Yeah,
remember.
if it's college algebra,
Oh, no, not really, no, they don't.
No, okay. But the gen ed math, gen ed stats,
You would have no students.
Jeannie says there's a learning communities conference hosted by College of DuPage on April 5th this spring. In case you're looking to expand your knowledge there.
excellent. Does it have a remote attendance? I'll have to look it
Let you
up.
know.
Yeah.
I'll let you know, Jeannie responds.
I'll have to look that up, but I would love to start doing this because I have found that breaking the silos is one of the best ways to getting new ideas, fresh blood, fresh eyes. And so partnering with somebody outside of STEM, I think will go a long way towards helping me build my skill set in teaching. And then I did include many of the references. I don't think I got all of them typed in. Several of these are available for free through CETL.
Yes,
Inclusive teaching,
yes, we have inclusive teaching, we have, oh gosh.
the Norton Guide to Equity-Minded Teaching. I think we have a digital version available to everybody.
Yeah. Also Jamie typed in the chat, the ECE math courses are Math 104, 110, and Business 120.
Oh, yeah.
So.
There
So 104, we could partner.
you go. Let's do it.
110, I believe, is math for
I think it's
LA.
math for educators, yeah.
Yeah, I don't teach that. If there's any way to avoid, I'd take a pay cut before I teach that class right now.
Yeah, it's okay. My students would like not work before. they wanna
Well,
take
the
it,
absolute worst group of students
so- Patrick.
is in-service teachers.
Yup,
The second worst group of students are future teachers.
yup.
That class is either the joy to behold, or it is just the albatross around your neck trying to drown you. And there's a tipping point that I could never master, where I keep them on the positive side of the tipping point. I haven't taught it here. It might not be as bad here. But at NIU and Aurora University. But. So that's my journey so far. It's not over. I'm still working. And I highly recommend reaching out to the librarians. They will build you a list, reference list that is geared towards whatever question you're looking for. They found me a bunch of stuff for math classrooms in particular at the college level. So you don't have to do the searching yourself. Take advantage of Tyler and Heather up in CETL. They've had to sit with me more than once. Just because there's not a seminar going on doesn't mean you can't ask questions and get assistance.
Actually, our favorite time to get questions, because we just sit there and it's very quiet back there. And when people come and want to meet with us, it is a joy. So we are always available.
They're helping me map my outcomes to measure clear and measurable objectives in my classes. So there was a shout out for CETL, a shout out for, and I would also encourage you to participate in the Guide Talks when the opportunity arises. They are, so Tyler and Liddy Hope are the co-chairs of TIDE, and they do a really good job of giving current and relevant and topics, but also giving enough space that you can talk about what you need to talk about in that room. So, any questions for me?
How do you balance, like, I appreciate giving the students the choice, but do they know enough to know that wrote homework versus taking notes versus verbally explaining something. Like there is an art to choosing assessments that get you where you want them to go. Do they know enough to pick the right one? Or is that part of your guiding?
In the STEM, upper STEM classes, yes, they know what they want. And they'll fight a cage match with each other to get what they want. When it comes to the gen ed or stats 1, which are the other classes that I've done this in, no. But they also don't understand that labels are labels. So when they chose nothing but filled in notes as part of their grade last semester, it was filled in notes and chapter projects. All I did was intersperse the homework problems into the notes and called it your turn. I do the example and now, so they're doing the homework. It's just, it's useful for them because it's right where it needs to be in the notes. They don't have to go searching for it. It comes from the textbook that I'm using, which is an OER. So they have resources through that to be able to answer the questions. But no, usually it is a long discussion about, you know, it starts out first as dead silence. Like, seriously? I'm not gonna be the first one to
How am I
talk.
supposed to choose?
And then the next thing that happens is the standards in math. Homework, quizzes, exams. And when they start, like I said, if they throw out final exam in a class that I have no reason that I have to give a final exam, it's like, why? Why do you want a final exam? And once they realize that they actually have a say, then you get a discussion going on, why does that appeal to you? Why do you want that as part of your grade? And we can structure it. But yeah, it's a learning curve. And like I said, we revisit it regularly over the course of the semester. Do we want to change? Are we still okay? What do you want graded based on completion? What do you want graded based on accuracy? How do you want the accuracy graded? So no, it's.
Yeah, and I
It's part
suppose
of-
your
that's part of-
discipline is, you know, there's barriers, or not barriers, but like guardrails. Like my husband teaches criminal justice and incorporates public speaking, like stand up and say something intelligent to your peers, and they hate it in the beginning. Why? It's like, you're
I
gonna be
think that
public
too.
officials. You
Yeah.
need to talk on the street, you need to, you know, and once he explains, you might not like it. And you might not think it's important, but I'm gonna make you do it because it is.
Well, we
And by the
start-
end of
yeah.
the program.
We have the discussion on, you know, what is the purpose? These are our outcomes. This is the content we have to cover. Because everything that I teach is an IAI course.
Mhm.
So there's certain things that have to be done to meet those requirements. But beyond that, it's a discussion, and it's the discussion that helps build the community. When you don't dismiss the questions, when you don't treat them like they're an idiot for asking it,
Mhm.
I need a better way to get them to start talking.
Hmm.
And I need a better way to get them to look at it beforehand. But I don't see a way to really fix that because we don't have a cohort model. You don't know who's coming in. You don't know who's still gonna be in, even if I tried to reach out before the end of this semester for the fall,
Mhm.
who knows who's still gonna be registered in my classes
Mhm.
and how many of them would I miss? So it's not perfect, but it is the discussion, I think, that builds the rapport. And I get people who, I also have to make sure that everybody knows that if there's anything that was raised in class that they object to, but don't want to speak publicly,
Mhm.
they are always welcome to come and talk to me. So I've had a few people who, yeah, I get why they want to do this, but these no deadlines, I'm never going to pass the class if there's no deadlines. And so come back and it's like, well, I heard from a few students. So nobody ever gets singled out.
Mhm.
That this might be an issue. Do we think it's gonna be an issue if you have no deadlines and we hit week 15? Are you going to annoy the hell out of me by trying to dump everything on me at once? Is that where we're gonna end up? So
you have any classes that do like soft deadlines?
All of my classes have soft deadlines because they have all chosen a pad to the due date with no penalty.
Yeah, that's what mine are all like, these dates will keep you on track, but then you don't have to all email me that your grandma's sick or your child is sick or that you're like,
Yeah,
I mean, I will say, I hope you feel better, but also, you know, if it's 2 days late, I'm still gonna grade it, it's all good.
it is, students are mean too.
Oh, they
A
can.
lot of what I have to do is rein them in, where there's always at least a handful that want to penalize people for missing class, and I'm just like, oh, no, we're not gonna do that. There is still COVID, there's still the flu, there's still all of these things. Or then, their late policies can be horrifying. I had one group that wanted to lose 10% per day
Oh, Lord.
for being late, and it's like,
I think because they'd already
That's
had
what
that
they
in the
know.
past before,
Yeah.
yeah.
That goes back to your very first point.
Yeah,
That's
the way they've been treated.
when they
And
were
like-
traumatized.
it's like, oh my God, why? Why do you wanna do that? Also,
Because they're not creative, and that's.
I've had people wanna do forced group work. I've had people who wanted to do forced class exams. That was a fun one. And it's like, really? So you're just gonna duke it out on who's one answer out of the 20 of you is gonna get graded, and that grade goes for all of you. And you think that's a good idea? But yeah, there's some, they've come up with some crazy penalizing, horrifying things. Lock the door so nobody comes in late. It's just like, it always takes about 2 weeks before they realize that I really don't want them to ask me for permission to use the bathroom. Well, what am I gonna do, say no?
It's like, who hurt you? Who hurt you at what point in your education? Yeah.
I think that's just high school. They have to ask in high school.
Oh, that happens here too.
Well, they're used to
But they're
it.
bringing it forward,
But it's, yeah, so
or they're
there's
still high schoolers.
there is a certain toning down, and then there's also the problem with balancing strong personalities with the quieter people. You don't want them, so I do a lot of divide the room. So I heard somebody say quizzes. Everybody who wants quizzes, move to the right. Everybody who doesn't want quizzes, move to the left. And so they're up and moving around and talking to each other too, which also I think helps. Except when it gets awkward and I have somebody in a wheelchair. And then I'm not sure whether or not I should do that.
Well, I've never thought about that. I do that all the time too. They just stand up in their rows and slide this way or that way, depending on the question. I've never had. Just made me think.
Three
well, I
semesters
do
in a
if that
row and
happens.
somebody in a
I've had
wheelchair.
that.
It's like,
Yeah, I mean, you could have mobility issues without that
To
obvious
think about
cue.
that.
it's the same with, I never got to use the soccer ball from the 4 Commitments project. Because I've always had somebody with limited mobility, and it's like, what am I gonna do? Whip it at their head and watch it hit them in the face? That's the way to make a welcoming classroom. Well, I hope this was entertaining. I would like you to remember AQ, if you have the opportunity. They have lots of little small activities that are very easy to incorporate into a broad range of classes and styles.
Yeah.
They're also very good at multiple things that fit your personality, so you can pick and choose what works for you.
And the concept of high impact practices, like that's a thing. It's not an ECC thing. Chris
no.
didn't make it up. Like
Yeah,
that's a thing out in
they-
the
yeah.
world that would be easy to research too, and lots of different choose your own adventure.
I like the AQ classes too, because you can take them and you don't feel overwhelmed.
Yeah.
Cause it's like, watch the demonstration, give some, there's not like homework, like I don't feel like I'm writing a paper or,
And they're very, very forgiving.
and they're very applicable to.
I love how it goes in a structure.
Yeah, it's
so
very
you can
organized.
Stay
Yep.
very on track.
Yep.
Wish that our learning management
Yeah.
systems were like that.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, it makes me D2L a little frustrating.
They use Blackboard, right?
Canvas.
Canvas. they do a lot of the things that I don't like you have to do the introductory post, and you have to do, it's like,
That's just because we have attitudes, it's not.
it's- say something interesting about yourself.
No pressure.
I have 12 toes. No, I don't, but that would be interesting. if
I
I
have an
did.
extra vertebrae.
There you go.
So
Speaking of freakish bones, yeah.
You should have 6 classes with me and I tell you, you have to tell me 6
Yeah.
different things. And I'm like, and you cannot repeat it next class. So you better start thinking now.
2 truths and a lie to the 6th power.
Yeah, I always have to come up with 6 different icebreakers too.
So have you gotten any formal feedback through student evaluations about this method?
Oh, yeah, I do a survey at the end of every semester on what they liked about it, what they didn't like about it, what I should change, how I can improve it. And every time I tweak it based on those. So I do both a Google form that's anonymous and an in-class discussion. So yes, it is an overwhelmingly positive thing in the gen eds. That it gives them a sense of control in one of the classes that they are most scared to be
And they
into.
don't keep trying to change everything based on what grade they're at, right? At that moment.
No, they don't, that it's. I think it's the dialogue where they understand there's give and take, there's other people in the room. And I don't know, that always is the most frustrating thing for me when students are asking for something extra. It's done without understanding that there's other people that are impacted by it. And so it doesn't just build the community, I think it gives a sense of empathy for everybody involved, and that includes me, because I'm very blunt about. Was it differential equations? I explained to them exactly how long it took me to write a test and how long it would take me to grade that test for the number of students I had in the class. And then you start pointing out that if you want me to do this many retakes, that's this many hours. I have a 35-hour work week. That means you're teaching yourself for the last 4 weeks of class. Do we like that? And then it tends to bring them back down to earth.
Yeah.
Well, then they have to see you as a human being too, right?
And I'm respecting the time that I'm asking them to put in.
Yep.
And so it's a reciprocal relationship instead of a dictatorial one. And that's what I think is the heart of belongingness and inclusivity is
Respect.
mutual respect, not mutually assured destruction. Been a long day.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you.
I forgot.
Probably good.
Oh, good.
Very, very.
Hearing you or me?
Hearing you. Yep. There, your mic up there.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
I can hook you up, pick your color.
No, it's still doing it, but all right.
The, oh, very good.
Oh, I mean, if you want.
Bring it to the